I'm Bob Ganzak, and this is Motivation U, the podcast. I'm Bob Ganzak, and this is Motivation U, the podcast, coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill inside the Coach's Podcast Room here in beautiful Celebration Point, Gainesville, Florida. Another bright, sunshiny, a little cooler today. This podcast is about leadership, and today I'll introduce our guest in a moment, but we talk about leaders that we know in our own hometowns, people that might not get all the glitter and the pomp and circumstance that some other people do because of your last name. It's really what you do for other people. And that's what this podcast is about, is how did you develop your leadership skills and what are you doing to improve those? We do have some Dale Carnegie programs coming up. We have one in Gainesville next February, 2023. Can you believe that? 2023. February 7th, 2023. We have one in Lake City that should start December 8th. It might be moved back to January 12th. I'm working on that right now. And then one in Valdosta that will start January 9th. You can go to jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com to find those and sign up and register right there. Everything, it's very simple. It says find a course. Click on that. Takes you right through it, and sign up and join us and be a part of things that are going on. The individual that I have today, Miss Sonya White, graduate of the Dale Carnegie course, the award for the highest award of achievement within the class, chosen by her peers. She won that award, and is the what is your title for the biomedical team at the University of Florida?
So functionally, I serve as a project and program manager and director for the entire portfolio of projects that we are running through the Biomedical Informatics Program. I also serve as Assistant Director of Research Administration. So I have a staff of, I think, 10 people now. We've pretty much doubled since the beginning of this year, so which shows that our program is growing. So helping them navigate how to manage projects, fiscal administration, grant proposal development, and just generally supporting our amazing faculty that we have.
Yeah, I want to get into that and really dig into, let people know exactly what you all do there. I've been very blessed. 30 years in the radio business. I learned a lot about retail, about different businesses that are more local because your radio stations are more local. And since I've been working in the training world of Dale Carnegie for the last 13 years, I've learned a lot about a lot of different industries. And there are some brilliant people out there. The engineers at Northrop Grumman, wow. Yet there's not been an experience that I've had that was not like the biomedical team at the University of Florida. I mean, wow. I mean, I knew every time I walked into that room that, there were some really brilliant people in that room. And I want to talk about that. But before we get there, let's talk about you. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up primarily in Melbourne, Florida.
Okay.
I was born in Texas, did a little bit of stint in Alabama, and then landed in Melbourne with my parents. And we moved to Gainesville in 1988. They both got jobs at the University of Florida. And I started high school there, graduated from high school from Gainesville High School, go Canes. And then went on to graduate from the University of Florida and with a degree in business management, and worked in industry for a little bit for an insurance company locally here. And then I have now been with University of Florida for the last 8 years.
Wow. So let's go back to those high school days. Who was the first person that really influenced your leadership style? What was that core?
Wow. So I would say...
I told you I wasn't going to tell you what the questions I was going to ask. This is not going to be
These
easy.
are-
I didn't
wow.
tell you this was going to be easy.
I'm having to go way back, Bob. So a couple things. I had some really great teachers that really took me under their wing. I was new as a transplant to Gainesville, which was a little bit difficult.
Correct.
Because people coming in and out, because of the university or, some of the hospital industries, it gets a little bit difficult to kind of gel and integrate. But some of my teachers really just recognized that I was struggling to, just really become involved. And so they made sure that I was introduced to several good people. And it didn't help also that coming to Gainesville, I was a year ahead in school. So I was a year younger than everybody I was in class with.
Okay.
But I had some really great people with really big personalities, very intelligent. Bob and Chris are two that I remember very well from my biology class. Just real and genuine. Just really accepted me and helped me navigate the school. And then some dear friends, Liz, Jeff, and Lua.
So these are friends that were high school cohorts of yours.
Yes.
So it wasn't like a teacher or a coach or anything like
No.
that. You learned a lot of your leadership from your friends.
Yes, because I saw in them, they weren't necessarily part of the popular crowd or necessarily the smartest crowd, but they were just real people, genuine personalities, and they just had an interest in people. And three of those people I still do really keep close contact with, mostly through Facebook. But Jeff actually was very integral in helping Sam, my son, with his decision of what program to go into at UF.
That's fascinating to me because many of people, they talk about their parents or they talk about their coach or a teacher that they had, and you learn those things from fellow students. What are some of the traits that you carry on and try to consciously implement in your leadership style today?
So one of the things that I'm very conscious about is that we are all people. It doesn't matter what your background is, your intelligence level, or where you came from, or your job. Everybody has the ability to make an impact, and all it takes is for you to smile and be kind and actually show an interest in that person.
Dale Carnegie traits.
Yes. So that's one of the things that I really make a conscious effort about is looking at people as individuals and also as equals, not really focusing on hierarchy or position level or, any kind of stature in life.
What you said that you moved here from Melbourne because your parents took roles at the university. What did they do? What type of roles did they take at the university that brought them here?
So they were both engineers.
Okay.
They are both engineers. And so they worked for the electrical engineering plant here at the University of Florida, at the surge plant, as it was called. So they did a lot of development with semiconductor prep and putting those types of things together.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I've had a number of people from that department
Really?
come in through the Dale Carnegie class. Jennifer Meisenhelder, I think, is one of the ladies that was an engineer there. Just fascinating. She was like my third guest on the podcast, too. long time ago, but fascinating. So what was that like growing up in a household where, I mean, engineering is not, you're pretty high caliber education when you're an engineer, very high. What was it like growing up in that household, and what was it like growing up around a university environment?
So it was a little challenging,
Okay.
and it was a little intimidating because I did not have those mathematical genes or the mathematical background or anything like that. So I did feel that I had to work really hard, and I put a lot of pressure on myself as far as grades. And then being in a university environment, we really, from a work perspective, my parents went to work and we came home, but from being around the environment of the university, that wasn't really something that I did at the time. So it wasn't really a thing, until I got to the point of higher education,
Okay.
until I was part of that environment.
So let's talk about something, Sonya. And answer this any way you want to. Two engineers as parents. Engineers are more stereotyped as introverted, numbers oriented, and yet the influence in your life were your friends that were people persons. What was the conflict of that? I mean, you know what I mean?
I do. And so my parents, when we lived in Melbourne and before we came up to Florida, they had a pretty solid group of friends that I was always around. And there are those folks that I do remember who were also very influential. And one of the things that we did all the time is we went sailing. And when I say sailing, I do mean harness the wind sailing. So we were out there on 16-foot Hobie catamarans and regattas and just, out on the Indian River a lot.
Wow.
And when we moved here, that experience went away for the most part. And so there was, from my perspective, isolation. So we didn't have those family experiences anymore. And so I lost some of that ability to really interact well with people. So I became very introverted, very unsure about
I remember
myself.
that from class, yes.
Yes. So that was, my high school experience was very much full of a lot of self-doubt and feeling like I didn't fit in and I didn't really have a role, which is why those folks really just kind of pulled me in.
Influenced you so
and
much.
influenced me so much to
Yeah.
make sure that I didn't do those things later on in life.
So what made you go into business? I mean, you got your BS in business administration from the University of Florida, the business school here at the University of
Yes.
Florida. What guided you to that direction?
So it was kind of accidental because I went through 3 different decision points in high school. My senior year, well, up until my senior year, I had planned to go to vet school. I was going to be a veterinarian. And then I had an experience working with a veterinarian where I sat in with her putting a parakeet to sleep. And the reaction of the owner was just so depressing and just so heart-wrenching. At that moment, I said, no, that part is not something that I'm going to be able to do and that I want to do. And my senior year in high school, I did actually have an influential teacher, Miss Chenault, who taught drafting. And I was very passionate about the precision involved in drafting. And so I decided, I can do this. I'm going to be an architect. And then I had several conversations with folks that dissuaded me from doing that. And so I graduated from high school. I went to Santa Fe College and just, took general education requirements, went through accounting and some of those types of classes, and got to a point I needed to make a decision and decided, well, I don't really know what I want to do. I don't really have a passion, but I can get a business degree, and that will translate pretty much anywhere. And anything that I do decide that I want to do. So that's ultimately how I made that decision.
So the first position out of college basically was Tower Hill, insurance big insurance company
Big
here in
insurance
the
company, yeah.
Alachua County area. And what did you learn about leadership by walking into that situation? You're just out of college. You've got engineers for parents. You've come from this world of being a little bit more introverted, and then you're thrust into the insurance business, which is a bunch of extroverts. What was that like?
So it was intimidating. It was intimidating to move from, being on the sales side of insurance, because that's what I did prior to going to Tower Hill while I was working my way through college, to the operational aspect, and really getting thrust into what it took to prepare products for market and prepare those products for insurance agents to actually sell them to customers. And I did have some really great management who really coached and directed me. And I did have some really great coworkers, that pretty much taught me foundationally the things that I needed to do my job well. So, jumped right into writing business requirements and getting into business analysis and things like that.
Again, down an avenue of introvert world, IT. That's fascinating. How I still, this is something that Dr. Hogan, which we'll talk about this gentleman in a couple of minutes here. But one of the things I had many conversations with Dr. Hogan about, was just how do we end up in certain areas in our lives? I mean, your son sitting behind you here. What is it that we can do as parents in a leadership role for our kids that maybe we have to go outside of our comfort zone in order to make sure that they don't go on the exact same path that we did? Like, you grew up in a world of engineers, more introverted, and you've battled that your entire career.
Yes.
And are we passing that on to the next generation? Or is that a bad thing that we pass that on to the next generation? Those type of things, because all of a sudden you ended up in an IT world. And now you live in a world of scientists and informatics and individuals that just have more intelligence than I wouldn't know what to do with from that standpoint. Let's talk a little bit about the biomedical informatics team at the University of Florida. Is it part of UF Health?
It is part of the College of Medicine.
Okay. Explain that to me.
So the College of Medicine is the educational component of the university as far as the medical programs.
Okay.
UF Health is the clinical component. And there is quite a lot of collaboration and quite a lot of overlap. And our team works very closely with UF Health folks on some of the projects that we're working through and some of the programs that we are running. They're pretty integral to the things that we're doing. But that's the differentiation. That's the basic differentiation between the two.
And what is the purpose of your department?
So the purpose of my part of the department, so our department is health outcomes and biomedical informatics. And so the biomedical informatics is a program and division within the department. And so we focus on the data aspects of research. So we're looking at medical data and data analysis and research to work on and prepare for better healthcare delivery.
And you're delivering that information to the School of Medicine?
That information is pretty much delivered nationally and globally.
Okay. How many programs, do all colleges have these programs, or how many programs are like that out there?
So biomedical informatics is it's a differentiator because it is a combination of so many different disciplines that go into it, from computer science to ontology, math, a lot of math, and things like that.
Couldn't get away from it.
I couldn't get away from the math. So it is a pretty big discipline, and it's a collaborative discipline. And there are pockets in other spaces and places, both in the College of Medicine, at the university, in the university, and then at other academic healthcare institutions as well.
So there are, like, the head of your department is
Dr. Hogan.
Dr.
Or
Hogan.
no, the head of our department is Dr. Betsy Shankman.
Okay.
The head of our program is Dr. Hogan.
Okay, I got you. I see that. And he came from the University of Arkansas?
Yes.
Recruited away, if I remember the story correctly.
Yes.
Brought a couple of people with him.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Matthias?
He brought Matthias on later. He brought Zhang with him
Uh-huh.
initially.
And now, has Matthias gone back?
He has. He went back to Arkansas.
Okay, that's...
And I believe he went back in capacity of chair,
wow.
if I'm not mistaken.
That's what a nice man. Wonderful and brilliant. What a great actor.
Yes.
And some of the things that we did in the Dale Carnegie class, he got to really show his entire portfolio of voices and characteristics and everything. He was a fascinating man. I really enjoyed that. So talk to me about the leadership in your department. What is it like working with these individuals who are basically scientists? They do a lot of grant writing. How does the leadership responsibilities get shared?
So it's very collaborative, where we have leaders in our department and our faculty that are extreme visionaries. They are so intelligent and so focused on how to make things better for general populations or specific populations of people through healthcare and through research. And what that allows for folks like me and my peers and my colleagues is we have that shared leadership opportunity where they are working through their visions and they're communicating those visions to us, and then we're able to come alongside of them to help implement and see those visions through.
You have people from all over the world that work in your department.
Yes.
I don't know how many different languages that are being spoken, yet I think the countries represented were Germany, Mexico, China. I think that was what we had in our program when you were in the Dale Carnegie class. What is that like from a leadership standpoint when you're having these individuals coming from all over the world and being kind of put into a funnel where they have to work in this environment?
You have to be very intentional. You have.
What do you mean by being very intentional?
Because of those differences, you know, there's inherent differences, whether it's educational training, background, culture. And so you have to intentionally decide, we're going to figure out that common foundation of how we're going to work together, and we're going to focus on our goals, our outcomes, where we're trying to get to, and focus then on how we're going to work together to move those things forward.
Okay. Now, when I worked with you and your team in the Dale Carnegie class, there were, and I'm just telling you my own feelings on this. There were times during our program that I felt that you took a subservient position to the other individuals, to Matthias, to Dr. Hogan. Was that just false on my thought, or are you sometimes intimidated, or were you intimidated by some of the education that those individuals had gathered in their lifetime?
So I'm glad you brought that up, Bob, because my focus is not to be at the forefront of anything.
Okay.
My focus has always been, and is still to this day, with the faculty that I work with and the teams that I work with and the people that I have the opportunity to work with, what do I need to be doing behind the scenes to help them succeed and help move them forward? What do I need to be doing to make sure that they're going in the right direction and that we're building the right foundation for success?
You know, there's a second part to what I said. And that second part is I also had the feeling all the time that you were holding those individuals up, that you were their support to let them do what they did and do it as well as they possibly could. Because when you look at your resume, I mean, multiple master's degrees, project management, bioinformation, right? Did I get that right?
So, yes, I have, yes.
I mean, you have an education that is on the same standard as far as investment of time and effort
Yes.
as any of those individuals that were deemed scientists, you know, or whatever, you know, doctor. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, you were on par with them. Yet you really supported them and put them out front. What in your background made you so strong to be able to do that?
Life lessons. You know, some of the things that I went through early on in life did forge the requirement to have, you know, a very strong intestinal fortitude and desire and drive to be successful no matter what circumstances and situations life throws at you.
So how did you get from Tower Hill to UF in the role that you have? Were you recruited? Did you hear about it? Did you just say, this is something I want to do? What was that process?
So the process was a little bit lengthy and completely unexpected. So I departed Tower Hill and then basically had a 6-month stint where 3 of those months I was admissions director for the Rock School. And then through process of communication and contacts that I had, I received an email from a temporary employment agency here in Gainesville, who I happen to know the owner. And she asked if she could send my resume to UF. And I said, yes, that would be great. You know, not thinking for 2 seconds that anything would come out of it, but it did.
What was the program like at that time when you came to it? Like, was it around 2014 or so?
So I came to UF in 2014 in a different capacity.
Okay.
Where I was working with another group of IT folks doing database and front-end development for several spaces and places across the College of Medicine.
Okay.
And so I was project manager and customer service liaison between these investigators and their groups. So I made sure that I was meeting with my team, meeting with the customers, making sure that deliveries were happening and things were being built to their specifications. And then the opportunity in the biomedical informatics group presented itself in late 2015. So I joined their team after applying and being hired in January of 2016, so coming up on 7 years.
Wow. So at that time, what was the environment like there? Who was running the program? And
So Dr. Hogan was in charge at the time I started. He had been specifically recruited to initiate this program. And at the time, there were 4 faculty with him. And there was me and a technical lead, an infrastructure lead, and a month later, 2 programmers.
Oh, awesome. That's interesting. We're going to take a break. Okay, we're going to take a short break here, and we're talking with Sonya White, and I want to get into some of the entrepreneurial side of your family also, how that plays into the world and what it's like being parents when both parents are working as much as you and your husband do. So we'll be right back. We're coming to you from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill inside Celebration Point. and this is Motivation U, the podcast.
We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, we haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Back to Motivation U, the podcast, coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill inside the coach's podcast room at Celebration Point. Talking with Sonya White, Assistant Director, Research Administration, Biomedical Informatics, Project Manager at the University of Florida. Got it right that time because I read it. I did do that. And have you been here for dinner?
I have.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is wonderful.
This is just an awesome place. You don't have to. I tell people, like I have a lot of friends that drive down from Michigan to southern parts of Naples and Marco Island and Fort Myers. I said, stop at exit 384 and have yourself dinner at. You might not be a Gator fan, yet when you walk through the museum and you just look at all of the things that are there, and you walk through this building. It's awesome. So I've got a lot of friends that have texted me and sent me notes saying, okay, I don't like the Gators at all, but that is really a cool place. So it's great. It was fun. And when Sam graduates from college, and come here and enjoy your graduation as we did for my stepdaughter, Jordan, when she graduated last year here in May. So let's talk a little bit about family. You have not, it's not a unique thing anymore where mom is working in the professional world of education and life, like at the university, and then dad is an entrepreneur. Tell us about what Joe does and how that interaction between the two sides go on. How do you share responsibilities?
So with Joe working, Joe works as a general contractor, is a general contractor, has done that his whole entire life. Also a University of Florida graduate from College of Building Construction. But as he was starting his own business many, many years ago, there was a lot of balance that had to happen, and we didn't have children at the time, and we were getting married as, his business was starting to get off the ground. And then once we did decide we were going to have a family, there were some challenges, that happened with running his business, and we had to navigate through those. But we fortunately, and this is where I have to shout out to my husband, he is very much a partner in everything that we've done. And so it's never been a situation where, this set of things is 100% my responsibility and this set of things is 100% his. We have shared responsibility for everything from day one. And so when Sam came along, we did have to navigate that. And we had to figure out, hey, he's got to go here. Can you pick him up? So we were constantly shuffling those responsibilities. And as he got a little bit older, and then the events at school happened, we had to make those decisions. Fortunately, we're both in a capacity where one or both of us have been able to support both of our children in their academic activities and extracurricular activities. But it is definitely a balance. Sometimes it's a negotiation. And sometimes, we really have to focus in when there is a true conflict and figure out how to make that work.
That is. I met Joe, I think the first time he came to a workshop that I was involved in. I don't even think I was doing the workshop. I think I was just there as an assistant to the person that was doing it, if I remember correctly. It's probably 2010.
Sounds about right.
And I think he had a partner who's, I won't mention his last name because I don't know all the politics that go on in life, but his first name was Joey, I think. And that was his partner at the time. And that was a fascinating thing to meet Joe. And because I didn't meet you until like 2018. And so I knew your husband for many years. We still have not got him in the class, though.
It's coming, Bob. It's coming.
Joe, if you're watching this live today on Facebook Live, which you can, and you can send in a question if you would like, and we'll get the question on the air, Joe. February 7th is the next class, and you and your son Sam are going to be in that, okay? So let's make sure that happens, all right?
Absolutely.
Right, Sam?
Yes, sir.
Off camera? For sure. Anyways, but as you navigate that, I mean, you're both in this professional world, a lot of stress, a lot of time, a lot of effort. And you say that some things were negotiated and some had to be more intentional. Were you conscientious of what you were passing on to your kids, of how you were handling these situations? Or did you just do the best you could?
No, we are very intentional about what we pass down. And are we perfect? No. And there's a lot of times that we mess up. What we do is we have our priorities in order. And so, our faith and our relationship with God is first and foremost. Our relationship with each other is second. And then our children and our family. And then everything else comes after. And there are times that we've taken on too much. And we've had to, deal with that stress and readjust. I do hope that both of our children, my daughter Elizabeth is a little bit younger than Sam. She's a freshman in high school.
Wow.
The one thing that we do hope we've passed on to them is that, yes, work is important. Yes, there's a lot of things in life that are going to take your time and attention. But to really focus in on those things that are truly important, that are really always going to be that foundational support for you.
What are you doing to grow yourself as a leader? What are some of the things that you've done since you graduated from the Dale Carnegie class? Which we give you basically a foundation to leadership in that. What have you done for yourself since that time?
So since that time, one, I've become a lot more comfortable talking to people and engaging with people, even though I still feel, like I struggle a little bit to make conversation because, in my family, I am really the quiet one. But what that has given me the ability to do is to go out, have more confidence in things that I want to attempt to do. So I'm back in school, now focusing on a master's degree, where the other things I've done before have been certificates, not to minimize that. So I'm trying to navigate that, in and amongst the other priorities, but just...
What are you getting your master's in?
So I'm back in the College of Business in Information Systems and Operations Management.
Oh, okay.
A lot of math.
The thing you love. The thing you love. Wow. That's pretty. Now, you were talking about a leadership program that you were involved in.
Yes.
What is that? Explain that to me and share some of the things that you learned in that program.
Sure. So I was given the opportunity by the chair of my department to participate in a program called Serving Leadership Development. And
that is through where?
So that is through Third River Partners.
Okay.
An amazing organization of people that focus truly in on what it means to be a serving leader, what it means to co-create and collaborate truly with your staff, with your teams, focusing on proactivity instead of reactivity, focusing on outcomes and goals instead of problems. Asset and deficit-based thinking, creative dialogue, navigating through ideas and situations, really focusing in on people's strengths and work cycles and figuring out how to maximize everybody's productivity, but also their strengths.
You have to be a people person to be able to do that.
You have to be a people person to be able to do that. And the interesting thing is, we talk about the extroverts versus the introverts. The majority of the people that I work with are actually introverts. But the nature of our passions and what drives us forward and the things that we're focusing on accomplishing really pulls out that ability to interact with people and engage people and move them and these initiatives forward.
I remember from back in the class and talking, and I would love to have Dr. Hogan in here one day and bring him in to share some of these stories. But he had certain things that happened in his life. I remember him telling the story about having to introduce Do you meet a lot of people like that in your world that they're like just into their business, and how do they interact with you?
It varies. It really depends on who we're coming across. So, and part of that is, if you do have those people who are just, really focused in on what they're trying to do, but we need them engaged in order to move some of these programs forward, then we have to work to figure out, okay, how do we pull you in? How do we get you to that point of being comfortable and trusting so that we're interacting effectively as a group?
The first time that I came, you had me come and talk to your whole team. I made a presentation to the entire leadership team in your world. And I can still remember that. I remember the table we were sitting in, where I sat and where everybody else was, and how that meeting went. That was one of the most difficult and painful situations from my standpoint. Because usually, if people don't like the program that I'm talking to them about, or if they're intimidated by it, they show me that. But I looked at like 6 or 7 stoic faces with no expression whatsoever. And I could not read the room at all, So I was very surprised when you called me back and said, oh, we're signing up 5 or 6 people. I think there were 6 and then 1 dropped out. We're signing up, a group of people to be in the program. I was like, really? It was amazing to me. What is that like to work in that environment all the time? Now, I know that the Dale Carnegie course helped them become outgoing and everything else, right? But what is that? I mean, because you're working with a lot of really statistical, analytical individuals. How do you communicate?
You have to ask a lot of questions and really understand why it is we're doing what we're doing. And once you understand the why, then our teams can start to then break it down into, okay, what is it we need to do? Who is it we need to be working with? Where, when, why, what, all of those things. And it can be challenging because sometimes when you're dealing with people that are highly intelligent and visionary, it's a challenge to pull things out and get enough information and enough detail to effectively move things forward. And so that's really a lot of what I've learned is making sure that you're not aggressive, and sometimes you can't even be assertive, but just that gentle pressure to go, okay, we're all on the same page here, we're all on the same team, we're all trying to move this forward. Here's what I need from you for me to help you move this forward. Here's what our teams need for us to help you move this forward.
I look at it from the standpoint that communication was the most difficult thing for me. Now, I was an outsider, so I was trying to communicate with them. Do you find that when you're dealing with your team that on the inside they communicate better with each other, or is it just the outside that they struggle communication with?
No, the communication piece is pretty much a struggle no matter what. And it's a constant space and place that we have to get to level ground on. Because there are so many different areas of focus, even though, we're all part of this big team, it is so multidisciplinary, and there are so many spaces and places that they're trying to make headway in that,
It's changing
It's
constantly.
changing constantly, and we're always trying to, okay, are we all moving in the same direction? Are we, moving out in a starburst? Is that okay? Or do we need to focus in again on being more cohesive?
I gotcha.
Focusing on, still from a foundational perspective, who are we? And foundationally, what are we trying to do? Where do we need to work together? Where is it okay for people to, kind of go out?
Go into their cocoon.
Go into their cocoon.
Yep.
So
That's fascinating.
It's a constant balance.
Are you still in the same building, or did you get elevated out of the temporary?
I am still in the modular building. However, we are going to be moving soon into our new data science and information technology building.
Where is that?
That is across from the Rights Union.
Okay.
It is the Malachowski Hall. Wow. Data science and
When does
information
that take
technology building.
When does that take place?
So we think June or July of next year.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Because I know, like, back when I first started working with you, that was one of the intentions, was that we're only going to be here for a short while longer. And it turned into 5 years.
Turned into 5 years, and our department has continued to grow.
It was tight in there.
It was tight in there before, and it's tighter now. But we will be co-locating. So where our faculty are in a different building now. And we're in another building, and then, with COVID and the pandemic and all these different hybrid work agreements now, we'll be reconfiguring and navigating that when we move. And we'll be sharing, I think, with 7 other departments. It's a huge building. It's a 7-story building.
I have to drive over there and see that.
Yes, it is.
Is it brand new, or is it renovated?
It's brand new. No.
Brand new.
They took out the greenhouses across from the Rights Union.
Okay, so now I know where it is, which direction it is.
Yes.
'Cause across the street can go that way or that way, right?
Nope, it's right there.
Yeah,
Can't miss it.
And I haven't been over there for a long time. I used to do a lot of work with Aramark, which was and is the food service for the university, and so I was in the Rights Union very often, down in the bowels of the building downstairs, and in the dungeon, where their offices were. But that has changed. So what do you see as the number one trait as a leader? What if you had to hone it down to one word or one short phrase, what is the most important trait of a leader to you?
Service.
Okay.
Service.
Why do you say that? You knew there was going to be the second part of that.
Yes,
Okay.
and I want to articulate it to the way that it reflects where I come from.
Okay.
Leadership to me, yes, you have the people at the forefront that are leading companies and have their names plastered everywhere. But then when you drill down and look at the health of their people, and health from an organizational perspective.
Right.
Are they happy? Do they feel appreciated? Do they feel like they're not important? How do they feel? How do they feel they make an impact to the organization? And so really for me, my perspective from leadership is, how are you serving your people? How are you making sure that they feel important, that they feel like they matter, that they feel like they are contributing something positive to the organization and to the mission?
That also helps recruiting also, because we don't understand that all the time, that our leadership style, people find out about it, and do they want to work for that type of a world? Like if you were to ask me that question, the first word that would come out of my mouth is honesty. I think a leader must be honest. I think that's the foundation of what we do. And I've had people challenge me on that, saying, well, sometimes you can't tell your staff everything that you need to tell them because of negotiations that are going on. It still is honesty, to me. But after listening to you say service, I'm starting to think a little differently on that also.
And I've had to learn that. That has been a very big learning experience for me. Because there was a time when I was leading pretty much the project management side of Tower Hill, from an IT perspective. My focus was always on, okay, we have things to do, focus on the timeline, focus on the deliverables, focus on the bottom line, we've got to get these things done. And that was it. Somebody else can deal with, how people feel and what they think and all these things. I just need you people to get together, do your jobs, and make sure we're hitting these timelines. And the joke wasn't, I don't know if it was a joke,
Okay.
but our executive leadership, when we had projects that had tight timelines and needed to be turned around and needed to be done, they would actually say, give it to Sonya, we'll deal with the carnage and the fallout later.
Oh, wow. So you would run it through the mill sort of and make sure it happened, and then
Yes.
whatever happened, happened.
Yes.
Corporate America, Tower Hill, educational America, governmental America, University of Florida. What is the difference in leadership when you look at the two areas?
It's different from a mindset perspective. So sometimes in an education and academic perspective and a government perspective, education, academia, sometimes that discipline and understanding is lost. And because there's not an understanding of what that actually is and what it takes to lead people, to lead teams, because the focus is, I just want to do this research. I've done this education, I've done this training. My job is to do the research. And sometimes you struggle a little bit in a governmental environment too, because you can be in a position where you feel stuck. Like it's such a stodgy organizational hierarchical structure. And
It's well put.
you don't know, where or how you can make changes.
Okay.
And one of the things that I have learned in the last several years, but specifically in the last 6 months, is you have to find those spaces and places. And the spaces and places where you find to make those changes are your people and your teams. And you focus in on them and how do you help them succeed? And how do you move them forward? How do you focus in on them with a compassionate presence so that you know, or they know that you care about them? And then that change starts to happen.
So in corporate America, when you're talking about goals and you're having your leadership meetings and you're talking with management and upper management, they're usually talking about one thing, the bottom line. In educational university environment, what is that bottom line that they talk about?
It depends on the space.
Okay.
So you have the institutional organizational structure itself.
You still have to be concerned about the cost.
You still have to be concerned
because they have
about
a
the
budget.
bottom line.
But you don't talk that much about it. It's not like in insurance sales. I mean, everybody there, as far as the salespeople and the people that are supporting them, we've got to get this account. We've got to get this, this order. We've got to get this contract. I mean, in the construction world of your husband, it's I've got to build this. I'm bidding on this, bidding on that, and I got competition. You don't have that in that same ilk.
It depends.
Okay.
So from the university perspective, there are a lot of different layers of financial input. And in the academia research environment that I'm in, there is that focus on the financial implication. So we are all grant funded, the majority of us, in the space and place that we live in. And so there is that constant focus on, okay, we've got to go get another grant. We have to make sure people are funded. We have to, so we're always looking at the financial outlay to make sure we're taking care of not only the resources that are needed to do the job, but also our people.
So it's such a huge burden, really.
Yes.
There are certain individuals in corporate America that are responsible for the income. And then a lot of the other people support that or create the, create the structure to help them do that. Whereas in your world, the people doing the research are also seeking the grants. So not only are you the product, the creator of the product, the creativity team, you're also the salespeople that are writing the.
Pretty much.
That's stress.
Yes.
Stress a lot.
Yes.
Stress a lot. How do you deal with the stress inside the workplace?
So we try to stay focused on what our goals are. And when it comes to the financial implications, I do try to minimize those conversations to the people who can actually help do something about that and alleviate those
So you
concerns.
shield some individuals from.
Because it's very stressful. I mean, everybody that comes in, for the most part, is time limited. It's because it's funding based.
Right.
And so what we have done and what we continue to try to do, and my philosophy is, we're looking at a 3-year time period. And this is my philosophy. This is, not anything that, is necessarily broader policy or anything like that. We're working on making sure that we can commit to at least 3 years. And then always stay focused on, okay, where do we have funding gaps? Where do we have, resource allocation that we can move or fill or shift or change? All while still trying to focus on making sure that we're focused on career growth and development for our folks so that, the work that they're doing is something they can engage in and that they're interested in for the most part.
That's like really interesting. I appreciate you being here today. This is, to me, we could go 2 hours, 3 hours. I sit and pick your brain on these because I'm so interested in what your department does and how it. We didn't even talk about some of the projects that you've worked on, which we could We'll save that. Tell Dr. Hogan he's going to come in here and be a part of this. All
I'll
right?
tell him.
Thank you very much for
Absolutely.
being here, Sonya.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for sitting in, Sam. I appreciate you being here, even though you're never on camera or on microphone. It was nice having you here. Got a lot of classes coming up. Gainesville, February 7th. Lake City, probably January 12th. January 9th in Valdosta. This is Motivation U, the podcast.